The books got around for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He is the author of the book Your Business Growth Playbook, no other than Mr. Jeremy Shapiro.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Jeremy, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure. My entire career has been entrepreneurship. I've been a serial entrepreneur for about 3 decades now, having not only had a number of businesses of my own, but all of those being in service of fellow entrepreneurs. So every day I get to work with business owners and founders and entrepreneurs and work with them on breaking through the plateaus they've hit and getting their business back into a growth mode.
Breaking through. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering book or books like this to come. So, Mr. Jeremy, tell us what inspired you to write your business growth playbook.
As I've been working with businesses over the years, I found that, where they get stuck is usually one of a few areas. And so I would use rather simple strategies, depending on what they needed, to get them back into a growth mode. And over time, I found I was sharing the same ideas and helping companies execute the same strategies. And what I had inside that I didn't know at the time was this playbook that I would draw from. And as I thought about this, I realized it hadn't properly been codified and put down onto paper in writing so that someone else could just use the strategies and implement it in their own business without me having that consultative approach. So that was really the birth of the idea of putting all of these ideas into one place. And with the playbook, unlike sort of a novel or a book you read start to finish, you can jump in and get to the strategy that is most impactful for you. You can go through an assessment. You can go to the index in the back, which breaks strategies down sort of categorically and by business model. And that really lets our readers jump around the book and find the strategy they need that they can implement in their business today with not just the how-to and the examples, but the thought-provoking questions you need to ask yourself about implementation in your own business to put it into practice.
Why frame this as a playbook instead of a strategy guide? What makes this inherently actionable?
Yeah, so we can talk theory and bigger picture. And I've got a huge library myself. I'm an avid reader, and a lot of the folks I work with are fellow voracious readers of books on personal improvement and business growth and all. And I find there's a lot of books that fall into this category of theory, right? We talk
Yes.
about the idea of what you could do, and we get you all excited. We tell you the why and we tell you the what, but then the authors leave out that really critical component, which is the how. And so for me, when I find books that actually have the how, that get into the tactics, those speak to me because I'm one of those people who doesn't want to just be inspired. I want to take action. So when I sought out to put this book together, it was really important to me that I truly write a useful book, a book that you can take and go do something with, not just feel good about having read.
Interesting indeed, Mr. Jeremy. And what's the most common well intentioned mistake business make when pursuing growth that
You
your
know,
playbook?
I so often see, especially for younger, newer businesses, that you'll have a business owner who wants to grow, but they can't get out of their own way, right? So this might be a solopreneur who's doing everything themselves, wearing all the hats. And at a certain point, scaling wise, that's just not tenable, right? Not only can't you be an expert in all the areas of business, it's also challenging time wise to do all of the things you need to do. And so there's usually a few mindset things that business owners need to figure out to get them into that growth space. One of those is that others can do the work that you do at the same level, if not better than you. And that's okay, right? So if you're the only one, for example, in a services business, providing the services to your clients and customers, right? Until you have written down how to do that and what the definition of success looks like, you won't be able to bring someone on your team to help you do that, right? And the second piece there is this idea of others taking your business model and then just running with it. What I think a lot of entrepreneurs forget about is that entrepreneurship isn't for everyone, despite what you might see online. Entrepreneurship is for us select weirdos, right? Who are willing to take on that risk and willing to take on the unknown for the benefits that business can have. Most folks want a job, and that's good. We need those people in our businesses, right? So when you show someone the system of how to do the work you do in the business, most often they're going to want to keep doing that and deliver and get a great job and provide a great result. And usually the last thing they want to do is go out and try and compete against you. And if they do, keep in mind, they may know a piece of your business, but they don't know everything you did to get there. And they don't know the next steps of where you're going as you pivot and continue to grow. So for business owners, getting out of our own way in terms of some of the mental ideas and frameworks we have of being a perfectionist, being the only one who can do things, and not believing that others will want to do a great job with our systems, are some of those first things we got to help business owners out with as they put the systems in place to grow.
How do you distinguish between sustainable scaling and chaotic expansion?
Oh my goodness. So sometimes there are business owners I work with that have done really well on the marketing and sales side. And where they're struggling is actually on the operations. And what this typically looks like is this chaos you're referring to, right? You see leads aren't being followed up with, new customers aren't being onboarded, customers aren't being cared for, right? And things are falling apart operationally, right? That's a lot of the chaos. The flip side is I often see business owners who are feeling stuck or plateaued, and they're looking to break through, right? Their operations and their systems are good. What they're looking for is more business coming in the front door, or to increase the revenue and profits with the customer base or customer flow they already have, right? So one of these is sort of a firefighting mode, right? Where you have this day-to-day chaos and you're really working reactively, right? The other is planned and strategic growth, but what got you to where you are now isn't what's getting you to where you want to go. And that's where business owners feel stuck or plateaued, and they're looking for the tactical things they can change in their business to get back to a growth mode.
Interesting answer and empowering too, Mr. Jeremy. And let's talk about the strategic foundation. What is your growth health check to identify where a business is truly ready to scale?
Yeah. So one thing we really look for is if you have an idea for a business, but you haven't started it yet, right? That's too early for us to start scaling because we don't know what works or what doesn't. However, if you have a steady flow of customers, right, your pipeline has movement in it, there's a lot we can do to do more with what you're already doing, right? That's when we can start to scale up. You've got a proven sales funnel. You know that your product fits your market and it resonates with them. And we want to do more with that. So foundationally, in the book, we talk about, a really simple formula that has 3 variables. And adjusting any one of these levers or knobs in your business is going to get you not just into a growth mode, but can also start to increase profitability, right? So as an example, if we were to look at your pricing, ideally, you're not a commodity business racing to the bottom to have the cheapest, widget that everyone else is selling as well, right? That's a tough business to be in. Ideally, you've differentiated and you are able to command the prices you deserve for your products or service, right? If you've differentiated well enough, you're resonating with your marketplace and so on, we can look at, for example, a price change. Now, for many business owners, they set their prices, they go about building the business, and they don't revisit that often. However, if we look at the math on those numbers, let's just say, for those of you with the pencil and paper ready, we'll keep the numbers easy, don't worry, right? Let's say you have a $40 a month subscription. Your cost of goods on that is $30, right? So you have $10 a month in profit per member who's part of your program. If we were to change that 40 to a 50, right? That's a 25% increase in the pricing. However, your profit has gone from $10 to $20 per customer. So we've doubled the profit. We've modestly increased the overall revenue. And you can even afford to lose a number of customers. In fact, you could almost lose up to half of those subscribers and still maintain the same profit level, right? So this is just an example of pricing. I'm not saying you need to go out there and do that today, But when we actually look at the numbers in the business, not just gross revenues, but also the profitability, we can start to make some changes that can have a really great result in the business.
Great results for sure. And why does niching down accelerate growth more than chasing broad markets?
Oh, I love that. That's such a great question. And niches is one of these things that is, I don't want to say it's debatable, but I can pretty quickly tell where someone is in their business journey um, based on how well they've niched, right? Uh, I was at an event and there was a realtor that I met there, and I asked the realtor, after seeing their little real estate agent pin, to tell me more about who they worked with, right? And their answer was like, "Oh, I work with buyers and sellers, and this city and that city, and really anywhere, anytime." I'm like, "Well, yeah, but do you specialize more in working with buyers or with sellers?" And his answer was, "Well, either one." I'm like, "Well, in certain markets, are we looking at this size home or this size? Are we talking homeowners, investors? Like, who is your ideal customer?" And he wanted to work with basically anybody who had a pulse and could fog a mirror, right? When you are
Yes.
competing with every business because you specialize in no one, it is really hard to differentiate. And what that made it hard for me to do was to refer him any business because he was a generalist, right? So if there was a health problem and you needed open heart surgery, do you want to go to the generalist, the general family doctor who's also a veterinarian and a dentist and a family, practitioner and can take care of anyone? Or do you want to go to like the cardiac surgeon who only works with people just like you with the exact problem you're having, right? We as consumers value specialists in helping us out. The more you specialize and the more you niche, the higher price you can command, the more you can attract your ideal customer while repelling the customers you don't want or you don't need, right? So that's a really difficult thing for especially first-time business owners to understand, is that when you start to narrow down a niche who you work with, yes, you're going to repel some customers who don't fit your ideal customer profile, but you're speaking right to the heart and the soul of your ideal customer. And you've now differentiated yourself from every other more generic service provider they might go with. So there's a saying I love, which is there's riches and niches, right? The more you niche, the more valuable your business can be. So one quick story on that, if you'd like.
Go ahead.
There was a business we were working with. They were B2B and service a certain size business. And when we looked at the industries that were in their customer base, there were a lot of industries, right? Company size and B2B and all these things, were the same, but the industries was wide. However, we saw there were really three industries which were over-indexed and overrepresented in the customer base, right? So we said, well, what can we do to specialize in those industries, right? You could, for example, get a dedicated website and brand just for a certain vertical, right? In this case, there was like the automotive industry and the manufacturing industry were two of them, right? So you can create just a page on your site, a landing page specializing in that. You can modify your pitch deck when you're talking to these businesses to be just about their industry, meaning the logos you're sharing of companies you've worked with, the case studies, the white papers, the examples are all in that industry. The language you use speaks to that industry, right? Are you talking about patients? Are you talking about customers? Are you talking about clients? Are you talking about members, right? All of these things are customers in a business, but depending on what industry you're speaking to, there's different language, right? Do we talk about your practice? Do we talk about your storefront? Do we talk about your studio? Right? Again, all of these are the place where the business is done, but based on what vertical or niche you're speaking to, there's vastly different language. So the more you niche down, the more you can speak directly to your ideal prospect in the language they understand and help them to become a customer with you, the expert, the top person in the niche that is defined by them.
Very well said, Mr. Jeremy. Beautifully articulated. And as a serial entrepreneur and facilitator, as well as an author, what are your short term and long term goals?
Yeah, so it's funny when I look at businesses I've worked with. There's parallels to the business path that I've been on as well, right? You sort of see yourself in some of the clients you work with, and I've always worked at sort of this high end, working with, boutique high end consulting, running high end mastermind groups, but there's not much been between hearing who I am and working with me at a high level. So this book is filling the gap beautifully by giving folks who haven't had a chance to really dive into how I'm able to help businesses and what they can do in their business. This gives them the chance to see how they can do it on their own. And it lets them go implement the best practices on their own. From there, for people who are looking for more guidance or who want help getting it done or want someone to review the action plan with them, those are all things that we're able to help out with. And, for me, where I'm going is, this book is filling that gap beautifully in the business, in my business, of helping people out at a more entry level. One of the tactics, we even talk about in the book is, as you expand your funnel, right, you can expand your funnel up with your ladder of ascension and have higher and higher and higher end offers. But there's also the other side of it, which is having more entry level offers. And so, as I'm growing and building out my funnel, this really fits that beautifully, of having a book as a more entry level way of getting to know who I am and getting value at a much more, entry level for folks that are looking to break through and get back to the scaling they deserve.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Jeremy, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be, of course, like you?
There's a story I love, and I even have this, right up front in the book, about Hercules and the Wagoner. There's this guy out with his oxen pulled wagon in the time of the ancient gods and all, right, and he's going along with his cart, and he literally gets his wheel stuck in a rut. Right, we talk about these days about being in a rut. He literally gets stuck in a rut, and he stops and he's like, I'm so stuck. How do I get out of this? And instead of doing anything, he instead cries out to Hercules, and he's like, Hercules, please come help me. I need your help. Right. And so Hercules comes down and sees this wagoner and says to him, like, well, have you leaned into the cart? Have you urged your oxen to pull? Have you pushed the cart yourself? Like, have you done anything? Or are you just asking for someone else to do it for you? Right. And so, of course, the wagoner then leans into his cart and urges his oxen forward, and they're able to pull the cart out of the rut, and he gets out of the rut, not because he just asked for help, but because he actually took action and did something. So the biggest thing I've seen move businesses forward consistently is not ideas, right? Is not inspiration, is not feeling good or feeling motivated, but actually doing something, taking action, right? We talk about minimum viable products, or MVPs, a lot. If you have an idea on something, what is the smallest version of that you can go implement right now, today, that you can block the time in your calendar this afternoon to go get done? If that can move you forward and you can ship it, not start it, but ship something, you can then incrementally build on that. And as you get into the habit of doing that, you'll find that implementation, execution, and action, those all lead to forward motion, and that can lead you to results. Ideally, great results, sometimes not great results. But if we're going to fail at something, better to fail early and with small stakes and learn from that and course correct than to build a huge something and find out way too late that it doesn't work, and you have a large failure and a large mistake to learn and a large, investment to recoup. So go take action, get it done.
And stop procrastinating, people. Please, please take the action now. If you have something to share to the world, share it. Share your talents. And thank you for that advice, Mr. Jeremy. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yeah, there's a great one I heard about called Your Business Growth Playbook. No, so of course I love my book. There's, however, a ton of foundational books I always recommend to business owners that have been so impactful to me and clients as well. One of those is Michael Gerber's E-Myth, or E-Myth Revisited, is a fantastic read. When we talked about implementation before and having a tactical book, Traction was such a great book because, unlike other books talking about core values and mission and vision and purpose, Traction was the only one that actually gave a framework for how to figure that out with your team and the questions to ask. That was hugely powerful. The Goal by Elliot Goldratt is excellent if we're talking about the theory of constraints, which is a process I use all the time with clients. That's a phenomenal read. Robert Kiyosaki's Cash Flow Quadrant the whole quadrant and the whole system is right on the cover illustration. It was so impactful to me early on in my years as a business owner, and has really helped me to provide a visual for business owners that think they own a business, but really they have that glorified job, and provides the framework for moving through those stages as well. So there's a quick five I love.
Thank you for that recommendation, Mr. Jeremy. And how do you pressure test a growth hypothesis before full rollout?
Yeah. So when we're talking about MVPs, a lot of that is around testing, but more importantly, testing small and testing early, right? So contrast this with you think about the stereotypical inventor who's, working in their garage, unseen, unknown on the world's next best product, right? For years and years and
Yes.
years, they tinker away, not having any idea if their market cares about what they're creating, right? So when you're able to test your idea out and interview some prospective, customers early and get their feedback on the idea you have, right? And understand their language, right? You can then have a very simple version of your product and get early feedback and build on that. I did this, we do this all the time, but a short story from one of my past businesses. I was sitting around the table at a mastermind group and had, an idea for a software as a subscription based business. It was going to fill a gap I had in one of my other businesses. I would be like my own ideal customer. And I was probably going to go build the system anyways, just to help me out in my business. But as I was asking around, I found out that the idea I had, other business owners were saying, Jeremy, we want that in our business too. How do we get access to that? And I'm looking at my little back of the envelope and saying, well, it's not out yet. It's an idea I'm working on, but I was able to get early validation. I was also able to get early beta testers who were saying, hey, look, as you're ready for feedback and for someone to start using it, let us know. And so I had a number of early beta testers using the system before it launched, providing that critical early feedback each step of the way. So that when we finally did launch, the day I went and bought our CRM and started taking on expenses for the business, we already had customers ready to flip the switch and start paying and start providing real revenue. So day one that I took on expenses, we also had cash flow coming in. And that, like all my businesses, has been cash flow positive on day one. And that same process of shipping incremental pieces and getting feedback early, I've even used in this book writing process, right? We often think of writers as going off to, the lake house and sitting out, looking at the lake and writing their book on a typewriter, right? This romanticized version of a writer. But if you create your masterpiece and put it out there and realize no one cares, then that's a period of your life gone creating something that's not valued. So I was really intentional about creating a book that my readers wanted to read. So from really early on, I was building out a reader list of people who wanted to read as I was writing, and they provided early feedback each step of the way. So if there are things that were confusing or things that were too long-winded or things that were really helpful or things that gave them great ideas or they loved, they could provide that feedback each step of the way. And as I revised the manuscript, I was getting more and more approval, seeing more and more readers getting further along in the book, and so on. So now with the finished manuscript, I'm not testing it unseen upon the world. I've gotten that early feedback from way early on. So in your business, look at what you can do to ship incremental value, get early feedback, and course correct as you go.
Mr. Jeremy, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101, love letters in third season, and movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season, and my science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Mr. Jeremy, what cherished business growth truth does your playbook retire?
In terms of like, what are the tools that we love in there?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm a fan of tactical things, and I grew up with the phrase of KISS, keep it simple, Shapiro, and that's something I take to heart and still do today. So the book is built around a simple three variable formula. We walk through exactly how to what these three pieces are, and the dozens and dozens of strategies that you can use to adjust each of those. There's a story I love from the world of cycling. I'm an avid cyclist. The British cycling team was terrible, right? They were one of the worst in the world. And they brought in a new head coach to work with the team. And one of the things he started doing was testing a ton, right? He tried making little incremental changes on the cycling team, from body position to bike fit to what they wore to what they ate to like everything, right? And he tried these little things. And what he was looking for was a 1% marginal gain. If he could improve the times, the performance by 1%, that was a win. If it didn't work, that's okay. They went back to what they were doing before. And by stacking these little 1% wins, he was able to bring them from one of the worst teams to world champions, right? One little percent step at a time. And so that same philosophy is so important. And what I talk about in this book is that these are strategies that we show you how to implement and put in place in your business today, so that as you make an incremental change, right, instead of it being additive, right, it's actually multiplicative, right? So meaning that 1% compounds on that 1% compounds on that 1%. And next thing you know, you get back to that growth that we all desire and seek out, as business owners. And I don't know about you, but like I find business growth exciting. It's rejuvenating. It's fun. It makes every day, all the better, right? Whereas when you're stuck or you're past that peak and you're watching things decline, that can be demoralizing and frustrating, right? You go to sleep worried about what tomorrow looks like. But when we're in growth, that's where we want to be. That's exciting. And this is the book that gets you back into growth mode.
Definitely. And Mr. Jeremy Shapiro, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your book, or any projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so you can actually get your hand on the playbook. This is the tried and true strategies. All of this and more is available wherever you like to buy your books. You'll also find your own complimentary checkbook checklist, as well as the intro to the book at yourbusinessgrowthplaybook.com.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Jeremy Shapiro because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more empowering books like this to come, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Mr. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me on. This is great. Love the show.
More to come, people. See you soon.